What's going on, guys? Austin here, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Extra Points 2021 NBA playoff predictions. So if you take a look, this is what the playoff bracket looks like for the most part. We have the play-in games in the Western Conference. The Warriors are playing the Lakers, and the Spurs are playing the Grizzlies. In the Eastern Conference, you've got the Celtics playing the Wizards, and then you've got the Charlotte Hornets playing the Indiana Pacers. I don't think either 9-10 team is going to move on. If you'll see, I've got the Lakers beating the Warriors, then the Warriors going on to beat the winner of 9-10. And I've actually got the Wizards, the 8 seed, beating the 7 seed Celtics, going on to play the Nets. And then, the Celtics are going to beat either the Hornets or the Pacers. I think it's probably going to be the Hornets, but I don't really think it matters. So let's start in the Western Conference. Let's go top down, and then we'll head over to the Eastern Conference. So I believe that the Warriors are going to end up the 8th seed. They're going to go to Utah. And in this situation, I've actually got the Warriors knocking out the number 1 seed. I don't know how often that happens in NBA history, but it's also not often that the 8th seed has the better player in the series. Stephen Curry has absolutely been on a tear lately. I don't think it's going to be enough to overcome the defending champion Lakers, but it will absolutely be enough to take on a hobbled Jazz team. They haven't been playing with Donovan Mitchell. I think he's supposed to be coming back for the playoffs, but that begs the question: how integrated will he be? How good will he feel in a situation with Steph Curry being on fire? I think that Draymond can come out, set some high screens, bring Gobert out, and then it's open season at the rim there. I see it being a 6-game series where the Warriors, blitz them, with Chef Curry. Then in Clippers Mavericks, I've got Clippers being the Mavericks. This is a rematch from last year's first round matchup. I think that the Clippers got better between then and now, and I think the Mavericks actually got worse between then and now. I wouldn't be surprised if the Clippers swept them, but I'm going to give the Mavericks 1 game just out of respect to Luka Doncic. One of the great young players that we see. Honestly, out of everybody in the league other than LeBron James, I think that Luka has the best chance to become a top 10 player of all time someday. But right now, he just doesn't have it around him. Kristaps Porzingis hasn't been healthy. They lost a lot of the shooting that they had. They traded that away for some reason. I'll never know why. And, the Clippers, they got Rondo. They got Serge Ibaka. Things are starting to shape up pretty well for that team. Then we've got Denver versus the Trailblazers. I think this is probably going to be the best first-round matchup. So far, it's really tough. There's 3 really, really good matchups, but this is definitely one of them. I see this going 7 games. But, in that 7th game, I've got Nikola Jokic and more specifically Michael Porter Jr., just going off. I wouldn't be surprised if MPJ ended up going for, 45, a career high in the playoffs and knocking out the Blazers. And then the Phoenix Suns versus the Los Angeles Lakers. If you pay attention to any of my videos, you probably know that I'm pretty high on the Lakers. I'm pretty high on LeBron James. I think that they're healthy, and that's all they need. Even if LeBron is 90%, LeBron at 90% is still better than 90% of the league at 110%. That being said, Chris Paul is probably my 2nd favorite player in the NBA, and he's probably one of my 5 favorite players of all time. And it's really unfortunate to me that he had to face LeBron in the first round, that he has to, go up against the defending champions. I wish that the Suns could have ended up with the number 1 seed, or the Lakers could have ended up with the 6th seed. Anything that could have gotten Phoenix away from the Lakers in the first round. And then on to the Eastern Conference, we have another rematch from the first round last year, except this way, I see the 76ers blowing through the Celtics. Last year, the Celtics swept the 76ers. I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happened again, the other way around, though. 76ers are a much better team this year than they were last year. A lot of that has to do with Doc Rivers, the person who I think is coach of the year this year. The Boston Celtics have no continuity. They have no rim protection. Their point guard play has been subpar, and I mean, there's all those issues with Brad Stevens. I don't know what that is. I remember 3 years ago they were crowning him, the next great Greg Popovich, but somehow things aren't working out. But on the 76ers side, you've got Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, just a litany of amazing talents, offensively and defensively, that'll easily get them through this first round series. And then Knicks Hawks is going to be a pretty interesting series. You've got a team that seems allergic to offense versus a team that seems to be allergic to defense. Not saying the Knicks can't score, not saying that, the Hawks can't stop anybody. Clint Capella is there, and, he's a great defender in his own right. And, you've got everything that's going on with both of these teams. Neither of them has a real superstar. A lot of the Knicks fans are going to try to call out Julius Randle for the Knicks, but I mean, he's not that great. He's about 70% of Anthony Davis, which is really good. But right now, Julius Randle is also the best he's ever going to be. Do you really think he can step up in the playoffs? So it's gonna be a tough series. I think this one will go 6 or 7 games. But the Knicks' overall defense and the veteran head coach in Tom Thibodeau, I think that'll get them through. Another rematch from last year's playoffs. This one's from the second round. You got the Bucks versus the Heat. The Bucks and the Heat are 2 of my 3 favorite teams in the East, and it's so disappointing that they have to meet each other in the first round. I was hoping so much that the Heat could make it up to the 4-5, or that the Bucks would slip into that 2 while the Nets pull back. Anything to keep the Heat away from the Bucks in the first round. And honestly, I'm probably gonna root for the Bucks in this game. I also think they're gonna win the series. I think that Giannis, although his 3-point shot, it's not monumentally better, it's still incrementally better. He's getting better. That plus the fact that you've got Drew Holiday now and Chris Middleton both on the wings, you've got a serious threat all around, kind of like the way that LeBron liked to set up the team in Miami in 2013 and 14, where he put a lot of wing players all around him. That's what I think this game is going to look like. If Miami had gotten things together, if Victor Oladipo had played more, possibly this could flip the other way. I actually see this being a tough 6 or 7 game series, but the Bucks are going to pull it out. And then Nets Wizards, we've got Russell Westbrook versus Kevin Durant in the playoffs. I think for the first time since he left OKC. And obviously the Nets are going to beat the Wizards. As much as, Russell Westbrook has been on an amazing string of basketball lately, and as much as Bradley Beal is, scoring this season, they just can't beat the Nets. There's no depth to the team. There's no support. And the Nets have a pretty great setup. I mean, they could run James at the 1, Kyrie at the 2, Joe Harris at the 3, KD at the 4, and put Blake at the 5, and have one of the greatest small ball lineups we've ever seen. So this is what we're left with, all right, in the second round. Again, we're going to go Western Conference top to bottom, Eastern Conference top to bottom. I've got the Clippers knocking off the Warriors. I think that they are perfectly set up. The Los Angeles Clippers are to do so. You've got a guy in Serge Ibaka that matches well athletically with Draymond Green. So the pick and rolls that they're going to do, I think Ibaka, if he ever gets trapped in those, he'll probably be able to handle it. But what I could definitely see happening is either Paul George or Kawhi Leonard being on Steph Curry, and then the other one or the other being on whoever's setting the most screens, whether that's Kelly Oubre or Andrew Wiggins or Draymond Green, and then that ends up being okay. So if you're gonna pick and roll, you're going from Paul George to Kawhi Leonard or Kawhi Leonard to Paul George. From a defensive standpoint, I don't think Steph is going to be able to do that. The last time that he faced Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs, Kawhi did a pretty good job at stopping him. And then let's go back all the way to the San Antonio days. The way that Pop, just shifted all the screens. He, switched everything. I think he ended up having like 13 different people guard Steph in some of those series. And, unfortunately, before Kawhi Leonard got hurt, that was shaping out to be a really, really interesting series. We've got the Denver Nuggets. I've got them losing this series against the Los Angeles Lakers for the sole reason that they don't have Jamal Murray, and the Lakers do have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I think for the most part, Anthony Davis and Nikola Jokic offensively are kind of an even match. Obviously, Jokic is a better passer, but Anthony Davis defensively, he's one of the 5 best defensive players in the league, and in terms of like all-time talent, like he's up there with guys like Wilt Chamberlain and Ben Wallace and Kevin Garnett in what he has the capability to do when he's hot defensively. He can move with point guards, and he can battle with the bigs, at least the bigs that we have in today's NBA. And then, that leaves the matchup of LeBron James. They got Gordon Hayward, people talked about as a potential, matchup to guard LeBron James, but you don't, not Gordon Hayward, Aaron Gordon, excuse me. But you don't want Aaron Gordon guarding LeBron James. There's going to be times where Michael Porter Jr. gets put on LeBron, and those are going to be easy buckets for him. Plus, the depth of the team around the Lakers, I think, is really good. I honestly think the Lakers are the deepest team in the league. And then going on to the other side, 76ers versus the Knicks. This is going to be a really, really fun series to watch. I wouldn't be surprised if the average score for the winner was about 92 in this series, like 90, 95, 92. That being said, I've got the 76ers winning the series against the Knicks, but the Knicks have, one of the 3 best defenses in the NBA. Just depending on what metric you look at, you've got the Lakers, you've got the Knicks, you've got the 76ers, you've got the Jazz. But then again, the 76ers also have an amazing defense because they've got an amazing defensive center and an amazing defensive point wing center man, and Ben Simmons, who probably should win Defensive Player of the Year, though. I don't think he will. I think Rudy Gobert is going to get it, but Ben Simmons probably should. The matchups just aren't there for the Knicks, but this is going to be a really interesting defensive series. So I've got Philadelphia probably winning this one in 5 or 6. And then the Bucks versus the Nets. This one's going to be a fascinating series to watch. Giannis Antetokounmpo is averaging like 41 points versus the Nets this season, and there's absolutely nothing that they can do to stop him. You couple that with the fact that everyone on the Bucks seems to play some excellent defense. Who did they get? They grabbed PJ Tucker, I think, from the Houston Rockets, but they've got him. I mean, he can roll around with anybody from a 2 to a 4, maybe a 5, just depending on who the Nets roll out. Giannis, obviously the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, and then you've got Drew Holiday, who can handle any guard he wants, and then Chris Middleton, who's pretty respectable in his own right. Put all that together with the fact that the Bucks are, I believe, the number 1 or number 2 offense in the NBA this season. I think it's a bad setup for the Nets. I don't care if the Nets are healthy or not. I don't think they can beat the Bucks in a 7-game series. I expect this game to go 6 or 7 games, but the Bucks are going to pull it out. Which leaves us with the Final Four. A pretty interesting, fascinating set of Final Four teams. You've got 3 franchises in the Lakers, Bucks, and 76ers who all had, some historic success, and then the Los Angeles Clippers, who this is their first time ever in the conference finals, and this year will be the first time that the Clippers make the conference finals. If you guys remember last year, I did not project them to make the conference finals, but this year's the year for them. That being said, this is where their season ends. The Los Angeles Clippers still don't have an answer for Anthony Davis. As good as Rajon Rondo is, can he stand up? Is he going to be a full playoff Rondo? He's getting older. His regular seasons are getting worse and worse. And, that being said, he's going to have to face Dennis Schroeder, who, is an incredibly fast player. Other than John Wall, Russell Westbrook, and John Morant, Dennis Schroeder is one of the quickest, fastest guards in the league. The LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard matchup, that one's going to be relatively interesting. And then that leaves Paul George to kind of go out there and score as much as he possibly can. I think this team is better. The Clippers team is better when Paul George is scoring. Kawhi is doing a little more defending and a little bit more clutch time scoring. But again, there's still no answer for Anthony Davis. And again, I think the Lakers have all the depth in this series. And then I would really enjoy seeing the 76ers and the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. These are two of my favorite teams. It's 76ers, Bucks, and Heat. If any of those teams make it out of the Eastern Conference, I'll be a relatively happy man. But I've got the 76ers moving on. I think that Joel Embiid just presents an incredible defensive matchup nightmare for the Bucks that I don't think they're capable of handling. You really need a center to take on Joel Embiid if Joel Embiid wants to be in the post. But then if Joel Embiid wants to play on the perimeter, you need a guy like Giannis. Now, that being said, the Bucks have a guy like Giannis. They've got Giannis. And so this series is going to be Joel Embiid in the post, which to some degree is probably going to minimize Ben Simmons. But this is where Tobias Harris comes in. The Milwaukee Bucks don't have a great set of wing defenders. They've got some really good guard defenders, but they don't have great wing defenders. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an Eastern Conference, MVP. I wouldn't be surprised if Tobias Harris ended up, kind of winning that, just because, the attention is being pulled to the post with Embiid, and then everyone's forcing Simmons away from the post. And then you've got, Tobias Harris left in the middle. Leading to the matchup that we've all been waiting for. It was a matchup that if you were at the All-Star break, asked was going to be, these two teams have clearly been on a collision course all season, and they've been good. And now they're healthy. They've been healthy. Joel Embiid is playing well. LeBron James and Anthony Davis are playing well. That being said, I've got the Los Angeles Lakers winning this series. I think that Anthony Davis versus Joel Embiid is going to be a fascinating series to watch, just because I don't think that Anthony Davis can stop Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid is one of the 2 or 3 players in the entire league that Anthony Davis will not have a defensive answer for. Now, that being said, Anthony Davis is also a much better perimeter player than Joel Embiid has ever had to cover, in any meaningful series. If Anthony Davis ends up playing more minutes at the 5 than, he plays at the 4, that's going to be the dynamic. Now, another thing that's really interesting is Andre Drummond, somebody who came into the league relatively close to the same time that Joel Embiid did, a little bit before, has had his struggles with Joel Embiid in the regular season, the playoffs, whatever it is. Andre Drummond cannot do anything against Joel Embiid. So it is going to be an interesting series. If the 76ers were to pull it out, it would be because they played Andre Drummond too much at the 5, going up against Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid would win Finals MVP in that situation. But, the other defensive matchup that's going to be really fascinating is Ben Simmons on LeBron James, the Fresh Prince versus King James. I think that both of them are, going to do a great job covering each other defensively. And that is why I believe that the Lakers' depth is going to play the most important role in this series. Guys like Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Kuzma, KCP, Montrezl Harrell. I think those guys are going to be the ones that end up deciding the series. And let's not forget Talen Horton-Tucker. He can go off in his own right. I see this going a tough 6 games, potentially a 7th game. But I really do see the Lakers winning this in 6. And my Finals MVP is going to be LeBron James. I think that over the last 5 or 6 finals that LeBron has been in, his scoring average has been relatively high. It's been around 33, 34 points per game. I think it's going to be a little lower this year because Ben Simmons is on him, and Ben Simmons is going to force him, out of a lot of bad, personal matchups. Which is why I think his assist number is going to be so high. LeBron James is one of those guys who, no matter what he has going for him in one night, and no matter what the other team is going to game plan against him, he's always got another backup plan and another backup plan. If he can't score on a certain night, he's going to make sure that everybody else on the team is going to be scoring points. And if he can't do that, then he's gonna start rebounding and defending. In those early series in Cleveland, back when he didn't have anybody around him, he was averaging a ton of points and a ton of rebounds because he couldn't get any assists off because nobody was scoring. This series, I think it's going to be a really well-balanced series. We've got 2 excellent defensive teams, the Lakers, who are easily the best defensive team in the league. And they're getting LeBron and Anthony Davis back, so their offense is clearly going to pick up. And then the 76ers, who are a top 4 or 5 defensive team in the league. Plus, you've got, Joel Embiid, who, is walking 30 and 15, and Tobias Harris, he can score 25 on any night that he wants. And Ben Simmons, he's a 15, 9 and 9 player every single night. And then Seth Curry, who's one of the most efficient players that we've got in the league right now, as long as, he's not sick from COVID, but this is what it's going to look like. 27 points per game, 12 assists per game, 7 rebounds. His rebound numbers are going to be a little lower because, instead of being normally the big, muscle monstrosity that he is, he's smaller than Simmons. He's smaller than Davis. He's smaller than Drummond. He's smaller than Embiid. He's not going to be the biggest guy in this series like he often has the opportunity to be. I'm going to say 2 steals per game, 2 blocks per game. And those are going to be his efficiency shooting numbers, 52% from the field, 38 from 3, and 81% from the free throw line, winning him another Bill Russell Finals MVP trophy, making that 5 for 5 with the Finals MVP for the King. So thank you guys for watching this video with the extra point. Be sure to like this video, leave your comments down below, and let me know what you think.